Looking for a casual baseball podcast to listen to? Well, Baseball with the Bard, presented by Clovercrest Media, has just what you're looking for. Tyler Bard and Noah Cross cover a wide range of happenings in the MLB and then dive into a deep focus on the Red Sox and Yankees. Join us every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for your weekly dose of Baseball with the Bard.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is our main event.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Throwing Jabs Podcast. I'm Big Jace, joined as always by my man Joe Guire and Jared Jones. We got a great show for you. Recapping last week's fights, previewing the big UFC pay-per-view this week, and then a nice, interesting who you got, and a wild fight announcement. But let's get into the recap, starting off with Marvin Vettori going the distance, getting the unanimous decision over Jack Hermansson. Now, I'm going to kick it to you, Joe. You picked it right. I mean, I was on your side with Vettori as well, but you picked it right. But how does he match up with the Robert Whitakers and other people at the top of this middleweight division?
Well, thank you for saying that, and I did. And I feel like this is one of those situations where people didn't know him well enough to know how good he was. You know, I've been saying for weeks.
Don't people your way through me. You got something to say. You go ahead and say it. No, you're right.
Jared Jones didn't know who this guy was and didn't think he had a chance. And listen, I want to be very clear on here. There's three of us on this show. There's my brother writes for this show. I know the least of anybody. I would say I know the least of anybody. I have to watch a lot of fights.
That's fair. Historically.
I had a large gap where I didn't watch combat sports at all. So that was my bad. But I love it and I'm back and I'm catching up on everything I missed. I had to watch all these fights. I'm watching Vettori and I come across the Israel Adesanya fight. Never heard of this fight, never saw this fight. We talk all the time about how nobody ever took it to Adesanya. What did I tell you? This guy took it to Adesanya. I thought he won the split decision, and as I said, if they had gone 5, Adesanya would have lost that fight. I promise you that. Now, if you want him to fight Robert Whitaker or Jared Cannonier or Costa or Till, all the guys now that are ahead of Vettori, sure, pick a guy. Because, let's be honest, Adesanya's handled all those guys. I don't see why Vettori needs to handle those guys. I'm sure he will. After the fight, this is the best. By the way, he broke Hermansson's eye socket in the fight. Most punches ever thrown in a middleweight fight in history. No emotion, very straightforward, very controlled fighter. After the fight, he said, Adesanya said, I'd never be in the top 5 and in title contention. Well, guess what, motherfucker? I'm here now. What's up? The only guy I've ever seen take it to Adesanya, and he did it exactly the way I told you Whitaker needs to do it, the way I told you Costa needed to do it. This guy's going to do it, or at least die trying. So, yeah, he goes right to the top as far as I'm concerned. I don't need to see Adesanya beat Whitaker's brains in again. No thanks. Not interested.
This is the only guy I need. I agree with you. This is the only. You're right about him and me. I didn't have the background on him. I thought he kind of caught Adesanya on a rough night. I didn't really see it the same way you did, but watching the rest of this guy's fights, this guy's serious. I think Costa's the other guy I'd most like to see him against, but we don't work from the bottom up. You know, this is the real world, and we don't work from the bottom up. So who I'd like to really see him fight next is not as important as who I'd like to see the champion fight next. And if this is the guy he struggled with and he's cleaned out the division otherwise, he should fight the guy he struggled with. Now, from a personal standpoint, do you take that? I always talk about risk reward. If you're Adesanya, I beat that guy. Nope. No thanks. I fought a left-handed kid at Scrubs. Buju. Justin Hayes' birthday was yesterday. Love you, brother. left-handed, hard charging, figures if you're punching him, you're close enough to hit. That's how this kid fights. I beat him once, 3 rounds to none. Didn't fight him again. We ended up with odd numbers one day, fought him again, won all 3 rounds, 15 seconds left this hard charger. I'm like, let's trade some shots. I got caught with a body shot and counted out. Sometimes when you catch one against that guy you know's not a bad matchup for you, you walk away and say, have a nice day. And if I'm Adesanya, that's what I do. As a fan, a promoter, and everybody else, this is the guy he should fight. You guys were right about this kid.
I'll point out one more thing, that Marvin Vettori has called out all of those guys I mentioned ahead of him in the top 5. And nobody gave him the time of day, despite what he did to Israel Adesanya. And now he said, screw it. I'm not interested in any of you losers. He already beat all of you. I'll just go get my rematch now. And that's the way I see it. And I'll tell you what, we're going to talk a little bit later on about cutting some of the fat from MMA. There's a lot of fat in it. And when your top 4's already gotten beaten by the champ, and we're just going now, we're picking who's going to get beat up a second time. What are you doing with that division?
Right.
The only guy that could really stick it to the champ, nobody wants any part of. Hermanson found out why.
How do you fix it? How do you fix that?
Yeah.
Is there a way to fix that?
I don't know. I mean, maybe some way. I mean, I think if you lose to the champ, I don't think you fall to number 3 in the rankings. I don't see how that makes sense. I don't see why you're still in the top 5 when you lose to the champion. You should drop out of the top 5 and have to earn your way back in. Whitaker losing and dropping back to number 1 or number 2 contender. I mean, come on, he's not.
But there's got to be is it less weight classes? I'm just spitballing here.
Maybe.
You remove a weight class or 2 and jostle a couple pounds here and there? Maybe.
It could be. Look, we'll talk about Anthony Johnson later on, a guy who didn't really care about weight classes or limits.
All right, we will get to that, but now let's shift over to boxing. Big fight last weekend as Errol Spence Jr. successfully defends his titles against Danny Garcia via unanimous decision. Now, Jared, what did you think of the fight? And from what you saw last week, is Errol Spence Jr. ready for Bud Crawford?
I can feel it coming in the Errol tonight. This kid's good. You know, and I'm going to be perfectly honest. I want to see him fight Pacquiao. Pacquiao, who, man, I might get in trouble saying some of this, but Pacquiao, who I kind of wish would go away because he's confusing. Like, he's such an enigma. It's like, who's the best guy out there? And he's like on this list kind of, but he's older and you want to see the other guys. And but I think Bud Crawford beats either one of them. I honestly think of those 3 guys who I'd like to see any of them fight any of them. That's the best matchup we're going to get is Spence and Pac.
Just like the last fight we talked about, I accurately predicted this thing. I said 118 to 110. 116, 112, 117, 111. This is exactly what I said was going to happen. Spence would beat him about the body, slow him down, and that's the only thing that slows Danny Garcia down, beating his body and then finishing his face off. I said Spence
just a touch closer.
Fair. I like Errol Spence Jr. He's a great fighter. I understand that.
Can he hold the candle? Can he even survive 12 rounds with Bud, though?
No. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you specifically why. And again, I've been pretty clear on this. I don't think Errol Spence Jr. isn't a great fighter. He certainly is. And he will beat anybody in that division. Just the way he beat Danny Garcia. He doesn't hold a candle to Bud Crawford. Bud Crawford, I believe, would take Errol Spence out in less than 6 rounds. No doubt about it, because I know Bud will also try to knock him out. And probably will, just to prove his point.
You know,
Errol
and your
Spence
brother
Jr. is, to me, one of those guys where this is like where it's Israel Adesanya and everybody else. Bud's here, Errol's here. Maybe you throw a couple of names in, and then it's a bunch of other people, then the gatekeepers, and then everybody else. That's where I see Spence.
Your brother had talked about Spence pawing a little bit with his left hand. When I see Loma reach out and touch a glove to make an opening, or I see Bud reach up or out in a little feint that's a little awkward and from a different angle than most people throw their feints. That's one of the Bud Crawford's greatest weapons if you're watching him. So where he's feinting and gesturing and posturing between and to set up punches, Errol's pawing. And that's why I think Bud knocks him out. And I think you're right. Bud knocks all of these guys out. And Spence and Pac-Man for second best is probably the best fight we're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason.
They should be happy with that.
There's a reason why Bud Crawford's #1 pound for pound, and Errol Spence maybe in at 10 or
Top
like 10. Maybe. But yeah, he's not there. He's not on that level. Do we want to see it? Yes, will happen. I'm not as confident, but it's a fight that needs to be done, and Bud Crawford would dominate that fight.
Yeah, two quick questions. Is Katie Taylor a better boxer than Errol Spence Jr.?
Technically speaking, probably.
What about Bud Crawford?
No, but again, I see comparable. I see comparable, and I see where, and I hate to say this, but where being the woman against Bud, it doesn't quite stand up. Just I think the overall speed and power would be just a little more. But yeah, I mean, to me, that's why I think she's fascinating, and why I'd love for them to find her some people.
Comparable, that's all you're going to get. Like if you're looking for Bud Crawford comparable, Loma type comparable, Katie Taylor might be the only other name I want to put on that list.
I don't disagree with you at all. Yeah, I love that. I'll say two other things. Look, Bud makes great fighters lose control and fight wild. That's what he does. He's such a statistician that I mean, you lose your game plan. You lose your cool. You got to start throwing haymakers. That's what happens when you're losing. And Errol Spence Jr. doesn't have the knockout power to take Bud out. So you know what I mean? He loses control. He gets wild. He's going to get knocked out. It's not going to help him. So that again would be my big concern for me. And I'll tell you the other thing, that fight, Spence Crawford, is not going to happen in 2021 under any circumstances at all. And I'll tell you two reasons. Number one, Bud gets out of Top Rank October of 2021. And then that's when the real business can happen. This is probably a 2022 fight. The other thing is, Bud's an all-time great, like I said. And I think Spence would like another year being in that conversation because he knows he doesn't deserve to be in it. And he doesn't want Bud to answer the question for him. At least not this year.
Well, and what you just mentioned is one of the biggest psychological games that you end up playing with yourself in the fight game is when you get frustrated, you expend more energy, your punches get wider, you have less control, you're more likely to get knocked out when you get angry. As I always think it's so funny when laymen say, "Oh, I know that guy, he would just get pissed off and see red and leave himself open to all kind of opportunities to get knocked out to somebody who knew what they were doing." You know, that whole anger is the enemy and fear of that frustration because I keep waking up with blood on my mouth when I get frustrated at the gym. I mean, you learn to tame that, but that's what you're talking about. A great boxer. People have talked about with me. I get so frustrated trying to land a punch that I'm expending energy with my brain instead of just my body because I can't figure out what to do next. And you let that frustration get the best of you, you're more likely to get knocked out. You get tired quicker. Yeah. And that's one of the things Bud's really, really good at. Loma too. And Taylor will frustrate you.
I really think the determining factor in that fight that makes Bud so much higher, a higher level than Errol Spence is like we've seen everything. Earl Spence isn't doing anything crazy. Like we've seen everything Earl Spence can do. We've seen in the past. But no one's switched stances. No one's fought his type of style before. He's very unique. He's a game changer. That's why he's number 1 pound for pound. No one fights like this guy.
Yeah, Errol is not doing, while great and upper echelon and an elite fighter, he's not doing anything I've never seen before. Those other 3 fighters I mentioned, I see sparks of stuff you just haven't seen before with Loma and Taylor and Crawford. And you're right, Errol has yet to really show that, oh shit, I've never seen that before.
Dare I say
70 in a Lambo? I've never seen that before. But you know,
I suspect this division is weaker than it appears to most people, simply evidenced by the fact that Manny Pacquiao at 76 years old is still beating guys
still kicking around
in that division. I mean, he's a senator most of the time. Most of the time he's working, solving issues in the Philippines. And then in his spare time, he's going into this division and routinely beating some of the better fighters. That's not good for the division at all.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the idea
Thurman
that anybody's in blood class.
list.
Yeah, well, there you go. Sad, really. That's what it is. They got to stop trying to sell us overhyped guys. Put them in the ring and let's start seeing real fights.
Just senior citizens with pre-existing conditions.
Look, that might have worked in the 80s.
That might have worked. Signs of a stroke.
That might have worked in the 80s and the 90s and into the 2000s. Look, there's way too much entertainment out there. You talk about it all the time. I could watch scrap fights. I love it. I could watch bum fights. I could watch 2 high school kids going at it on the internet. I could watch, God forbid, one of those idiot Logan Paul brother idiots. There's so much I could be watching. If boxing's not going to give us good matchups, boxing's going to continue to lose its popularity. If you're going to keep having these belts with these champions no one's ever heard of, all you're doing is hurting your sport.
Watering it down.
And it's getting worse by the day.
Yes, you're right. And with that being said, that moves on to our next topic. It's official. Fight announcement. Floyd Mayweather will face YouTuber Logan Paul in an exhibition bout February 20th. Where do I even begin? This is like, I don't even know. I don't even want to yell. Like, I've expended so much energy on this bullshit. Like, I don't even have it in my soul. I don't have that anger anymore because this is just sickening. I'm sick. I want to bring up my friend Zach. I messaged him. I sent him on Instagram, the Instagram post of Floyd Mayweather. This is what he responded. Boxing is not dying gracefully. It's going out kicking and screaming, doing freak shows. And like that's the perfect analogy. Like this is WWE stuff. We saw the Floyd Mayweather take on the Big Show. Honestly, I like that a little bit more than Floyd Mayweather taking on a YouTuber. Jared, are you still there?
I think Jared walked off the set.
Yeah, whenever you guys are done talking about it, just...
Listen, I literally don't care about this fight. I was laughing. Clarissa Shields called his brother a clown. She called him a fake Eminem or something. You saw Jamel Hill was actually messing with Logan about being racist for knocking out Nate Robinson, and he's such a clown that he thought she was being serious. I hate Floyd. I've never pulled for Floyd in a fight, but I hope he beats Logan Paul so badly that Jake feels it and that he breaks all the arms in his body, beating Logan Paul into the ground. And then he can't fight again either. And then everybody wins.
Well, you know what? For me, I like Deiveson Figueiredo. And I like Brandon Moreno.
Love it.
I like those guys. So I say we break up that fight, and each one of those guys can fight one of these guys, right? Figueiredo and Floyd. Logan and then I have a horse in both races.
I like that.
Because I don't like either one of these guys. And I like both of those guys. This is and there's like, I mean, we can go back and forth for days about there is a spot for this. You know, and I kind of wanted to bring this up. As frustrating as this is, name another sport, and I will tell you the littler version of it. Name it. If you say boxing, I'm going to say, what's the little version? You're going to say amateur. I'm going to say Olympics. You're going to say, yeah, I'm going to say professionals are allowed, which means somebody with zero experience could walk in. They would have to let you fight. And if you kept winning, you could fight a professional world champion before you were done that year. So no, that doesn't count. But if you said baseball, I'd say softball, fast pitch softball, slow pitch softball, wiffle ball leagues that Joe and I are in. You're welcome.
Now I'm pumped. And you've got my attention.
Yeah, flag football. NASCAR has flipping go-karts. And how high does that go? Like any other sport, you can talk about the alternative, the everyman's alternative that we can do. You go to a slow pitch softball game. There's some fans in the stadium. They don't all want to watch. It's not like a scrub scrap. But why is it that the most entertaining one that we have doesn't have a slow pitch version? You can't name another sport where I can't tell you the slow pitch version. Except for boxing, we got to go in there with 8-ounce gloves, and the amateur helmets, just like professionals would be wearing. It doesn't.
The
make
Aguirre
sense.
family really are not fans of Mayweather. There's not a single one of us.
Find a spot for that. What'd she say?
My mother said, "Has Mayweather ever fought a real contender?"
Oh,
nobody in their prime, Mom. Nobody in their prime.
Alfonso Gomez was on the Contender. See what I did there? You're welcome.
Like
it's just you're taking advantage of the layman. That's what you're doing here. And if you're gonna do that, leave a spot for us. That's all I'm saying. This needs its own spot so that we can have our own spot, so that we're not saying that these are the greatest fighters in the world when everybody in their gym knows they're not. You guys spar with Ryan Garcia? Everybody who ever watched you spar with Ryan Garcia. Did you ever see TJ Dillashaw and Loma? There's a sparring session between TJ, and Loma is playing patty cake with him. He looks like my dog doing 5-5-5, paw, paw, paw. That's what he looks like. He's playing with him. And he's dominating like he's trashing this guy who has some boxing skill, especially for MMA guys. Everybody there, everybody in the know, and normally fighters don't share those sparring sessions. It's a little bit against the code. But everybody in there knows where everybody ranks up. So you're taking advantage of the people outside the gym that don't know that Logan Paul is not there yet, and there's no way he could be. It is literally impossible for him to be where people are saying he is.
Mayweather carried a world-class MMA athlete in Conor McGregor, and it looked like what you're saying, Jared. He carried him through the 10th round, and then he said, okay, I'm going to end it now.
Find the reports about his prop bet. Find the reports about Mayweather's prop bet, because he hit him with the punch he wanted in the round he wanted. He only threw straight right hand. Why were there no uppercuts or hooks? Why are you chasing a guy around a ring trying to knock him out but not throwing any uppercuts or hook? Because you made a side bet on what round you would knock him out in and which punch you would hit him with. And that's the type of stuff we're going to keep getting if we get this. And people like us that are boxing fans and want to know who the best fighter is, we're going to keep getting more and more pissed off about it. But
you know why?
Entertaining.
If Floyd was serious, then he would have developed a scrap like program where Logan Paul or any clown on TikTok or anybody, you could come and maybe you train with Floyd for a year and then have some actual fights like you do, have them do some sparring against actual competition before you start fighting heavyweight champions. Because look, if Floyd Mayweather wants to start knocking out TV personalities or radio personalities, I mean, that's fine. Do it, but at least make it appear that you're not just carrying the fight and that it's something that is something worth watching. Because, my children think Logan Paul has a shot against Floyd Mayweather. They don't know who Floyd Mayweather is. And all they've ever heard is that he never fought any real fighters. And they think Logan Paul's a real fighter. The disservice being done to boxing with this by Floyd, I find astounding.
The only way this won't be a black eye on the sport, the only way this won't do any disservice to boxing is if Floyd Mayweather goes in and kills Logan Paul. Like, that would be the only acceptable outcome that would not do harm to the sport of boxing. Am I wrong?
But why would he?
Exactly. He's not going to. It's not going to happen. But if that's the only way that fight would be okay for boxing, that's the only way people would respect boxing. Because Floyd's going to go out there. He's going to carry Logan Paul 10 rounds or whatever his prop bet is. And people are going to go, oh, my God, this YouTuber lasted a couple rounds with the so-called greatest. And people are going, this is killing boxing.
I found what I think should be Floyd's next fight. I saw this guy on the internet. This was an amazing fight. I think Floyd's got a shot against this kangaroo. I do. Now, in this fight, the kangaroo got punched in the face and then ran off. But I think with the right training and with its own YouTube channel now, I think that kangaroo has a real shot. And he should get a shot. And we should pay Floyd $100 million to beat that kangaroo that lost to that guy.
We have to be fair. I've got to play devil's advocate so we can be fair here. 2000, Floyd Mayweather beat Emmanuel Augustus. Then he beat undefeated Diego Corrales, destroyed him, knocked him down 5 times. Then he beat Carlos Hernandez, Jesus Chavez, and Jose Luis Castillo. And then he turned 23 years old and beat Jose Luis Castillo again. He didn't really start this cherry-picking attitude of until he couldn't beat those guys anymore. He knows what Loma and Bud and Errol will do to him and likely Pac at this point, because just like in chess where you can't play bums over and over and over again without losing your edge, I'm not sure Floyd's got an edge. Rousey went through a period where nobody was punching her in the gym. Like, how hard are his sparring sessions? I think he can beat this guy. So does he. So don't the people closest to him. He's doing something safe and rewarding. That's going to make him money. It's hard not to hate the game here, I get looking for these guys to have some kind of morals, but to be fair, neither one of you wanted to check me when I threw my wife in there. A couple weeks ago, I said I could have done that with my wife and manufactured a career and WWE'd her way to a world title somewhere. Some vacant title against somebody on their debut, and you're a world champion, and people actually buy that shit. And neither one of you wanted to say, what about the moral code in boxing? Because you love me. Because that's my wife. Because it's rewarding.
Because I think your wife could beat me up. I wouldn't tell Erica, nah. Girl got a stiff right. I'm all set. Bro, I bet in your house when she says take out the garbage goes right out. I don't think the garbage sits very long. Yeah. Break.
Oh, man. Yeah, Trent's
listen,
starting to get there too, boy.
Jace, when I sold them a house, I said to Erica, I go, oh, does the house have to come with a dishwasher? She said, no, it does. You, Jared, she was talking about you. And that's fine. I'm not telling her what's up.
Oh, yeah, I'm saying. We're starting to fear the day Trent says she's not picking up any more dog food. Just starts mean mugging people. Oh, damn.
All right.
She's come too far.
All right, let's get back to UFC. Starting with the former UFC light heavyweight title challenger, Anthony Rumble Johnson. He was released in a long line of what Dana White says significant releases. Last week we talked about Yoel Romero getting released. Now Anthony Rumble Johnson, and presumably more to come. But he signs a deal with Bellator, which I think is probably right for him right now. Go to the heavyweight, fight the guys like Fedor, Rampage Jackson, those dinosaurs. But that leads us into who you got for this week. Who you got the greatest UFC light heavyweight fight that never happened. Anthony Rumble Johnson versus John Bones Jones. This was supposed to happen. They did a whole face-off. Jones and Rumble, they did a little like fake fight to pull a prank on Dana White. But John Jones pissed hot and got himself taken, or I don't know. Was that when he crashed into a pregnant? I don't know what offense John Jones had that pulled him out of that fight. But Joe, I mean, you said you got some heated words. You're excited for this fight, but what do you think?
Anthony Johnson fought at 170 for most of his career. He was 22-6, 16 knockouts, thanks to, of course, that one punch knockout power. Of course, he'd routinely show up for the weigh-in 6 to 8 pounds overweight, as much as 11 on one occasion. He made his career being the biggest middleweight 4 times. He missed weight. How undisciplined is that? And I like him a lot. I really do. But, Jace, Cormier choked him out twice. And John beat Cormier twice. So I don't even know what you're talking about. What could Johnson do that Cormier couldn't? He can't wrestle. He tried with Cormier, and Cormier choked him out again. So if he can't beat Cormier, why would we even have this conversation? John's taking big punches. Johnson hit Cormier with his best punch, and you know what happened? Cormier went down and got back up. So no, Anthony Johnson can't knock out John Jones. He can't out-wrestle John Jones. They could fight 10 times, Jace. 10 times. And he would never beat him. Do you understand that? The fight that never was, this is the fight that didn't have to happen. We don't need to know. This is a fanboy question. I hate this. Who you got? Paul Selden or Muhammad Ali? What's next? Mitch Blood Green versus Joe Louis? Mighty Mouse versus Superman? Heathcliff versus Popeye? There's a lot of fights that never happened. What the hell are you talking about? What do you want to do? A Mount Rushmore of cartoons that could be humans? Mike Tyson with an upper respiratory infection and against Deontay Wilder after Mark Breland drugged his water. Who you got? This is the worst who you have ever come up with. And you know it.
Oh, yeah, man. Totally agree.
He muted himself. You got anything? He realized he's muted.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Styles make fights. And
Johnson has no style.
Anthony Johnson does not match up well for Daniel Cormier, so don't keep throwing that in there. Anthony Rumble Johnson and John Jones, they both have very similar wrestling backgrounds. Both junior college All-Americans. So, I think when it comes to the mat, they're okay. John Jones definitely the more technical striker, but Anthony Rumble Johnson is the hardest hitter in all of MMA history.
Baloney.
And you don't think that Anthony Rumble Johnson can land
Baloney. And Ghana would knock Johnson's head off his shoulders if he stepped in a ring with him. Get out of here with that crap. Look, like I said, I don't think Johnson hits that much harder than Cormier. I don't. Maybe it's a little bit more. It ain't much more.
I could never get behind this guy.
John's taking punches. And no one's taken John to the ground with a punch. Never happened.
I always thought this guy looked his best at 155. You know what John Jones
because he
like
weighed
at
$180 in the fight.
155?
Of course he looked good there.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it. And the other part is, I mean, just coming around so big afterward. You can't. I mean, it's hard to see a guy 70 pounds bigger than when he started fighting, especially in the drug era. You know, I remember when Barry Bonds was first denying steroids, and he grew 3.5 hat sizes in his 30s. In his hat size, in his 30s, whose head grows? Your skull, 3 hat sizes in your 30s. It doesn't make sense. So you see this guy, and then you see a totally another guy, and you go, there's got to be something else going on here. And the first time I saw him kind of leave the UFC, they threw him out for drugs. He came back huge as a heavyweight from the middleweight. Finally, he wanted to be in a weight class where he could make weight. I could just never get behind this guy. I'd rather bring up Couture or Liddell versus Jones. I had mentioned George St. Pierre versus Anderson Silva at light heavyweight as a greater light heavyweight fight that never happened. I think you're on point, Joe, here. This isn't the who you got we needed. This is the fight that never needed to happen. I mean, I get that being said, I get Jace's point. This is
me too, totally.
Puncher. You like the puncher's chance aspect because of the athleticism. Because there was a time he was not making 155. You think he's got to be quicker and some explosiveness, but he never showed it enough at any weight class to be in any of those conversations.
All right.
Look, let me just say, Jace, maybe I was a little harsh there. If I was, I apologize. I like Anthony Johnson. I really do. But Rumble was impressive because he routinely fought 3 weight classes lower than he should have been.
Miguel Cotto.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're the biggest middleweight. Congratulations. You hit harder than that. Well, of course you do. You're 30 pounds heavier.
But you still knocking guys out with light heavyweight. Like, I don't understand.
He's not knocking John Jones out. I don't need to explain this again, do I?
Who is John
top.
Jones fought that had that knockout power? Thiago Santos, who had a whole destroyed knee. Anyone else? Who else had that knockout power?
Cormier started to develop it late.
He had it in heavyweight, never light heavyweight.
Against just about everybody else.
Okay, but would Gustafson's knockouts, were they as spectacular? Or as, like, did they have that oh shit factor like Rumbles did? No, they did not.
He's fighting at 230 in a 205-pound division. I mean, yes, he's knocking people out.
Weight.
Again,
Even
as a light heavyweight, he's still overweight. What are you talking about? This is nonsense. Come on.
Josh bangers like Josh Koscheck.
Dude, imagine if Israel Adesanya went down to like strawweight. Are you kidding me? What? Dude, he would kick people in half.
All right, I think this is a lot more interesting than you guys are making it sound, but we will move on and go to the previews for this weekend's fights. Starting off with the co-main event, my boy Tony Ferguson, my second favorite fighter of all time behind Cain Velasquez, takes on the number 7th ranked lightweight Charles Oliveira. Jared, what do you expect from this co-main event?
This is one of the greatest 8-point strikers that I like here in the upset, Charles Oliveira. There are a couple guys that come to mind when you say 8-point strikers: Edson Barbosa, Charles Oliveira. I think Ferguson's in a touchable spot here. And I like Oliveira with the upset. This should be a great fight, but I think Oliveira could upset him.
I'm glad you brought up the number 8 because Oliveira is actually on an 8-fight win streak. Holds multiple UFC records, most submission wins at 14. He's tied for most at 16 finishes, 16 end of the night bonuses in his career. Number 7 right now, obviously in the lightweight rankings. Oliveira has beaten 8 nobodies. When he fought Pettis, Holloway, Edgar, Cerrone, Paul Felder, all these guys in their prime, lost to all of them. Tony Ferguson, obviously coming off that horrific beating at the hands of Justin Gaethje. And while he did get foobarred in that fight, they had to stop the fight. Tony Ferguson doesn't give up. Oliveira, and I hate to say this, I'm not going to use the word gives up, but when Oliveira gets in trouble, as evidenced by those 8 losses, all to big names, by the way, for a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy, he gets choked out and taps quick. Royce Gracie must be rolling in his grave at this stuff. Horrible. A Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy getting choked out, giving up his back. There seems to be those moments in. I love Oliveira. Don't get me wrong, Jared. I think this guy, he reminds me a lot of Uriah Hall, where you watch the highlights and you're like, oh, God, this guy's insane. Then you see the 29-8 and you're like, where are these 8 losses coming from? And it's all the best. Now, I'll say this. Oliveira's improved some of his game. He's a better striker, more head movement, more lateral movement.
He's shown the ability to bounce back from those. We haven't seen that yet from Ferguson.
Jared,
not an ass whooping like that.
As long as this, giving up your back, getting choked out, and tapping quick things in your bag, it's there to employ. And I just have a feeling that Tony Ferguson, I mean, he's a pit bull. Tony Ferguson doesn't, he's, again, you watch the Gaethje fight. How does a human being take that beating and he still keeps coming? Oliveira's, he can't win Oliveira's going to need to do something spectacular if he's going to win this fight. I just don't see it happening. I think Tony Ferguson's way too motivated in this fight. He's an animal, and I just don't know that Oliveira has enough weapons here to take somebody like Tony Ferguson out.
Oh, and if he bounces back the way he ought to, I absolutely agree with you, but I don't know that he can. And if I'm putting money down, the odds are in Ferguson's favor, and I think they're closer. It's a little bit like the Danny Garcia fight where I kind of see the winner being the guy they have, but it's a lot closer than what they have him by. You know, Jared, so maybe Ferguson edges him out, but it's a lot closer than people think.
Look at the way Deontay Wilder reacted to, obviously, a loss. Devastating. And I think for Tony Ferguson, the loss to Gaethje, I mean, that wasn't just a loss. That was the most vicious beatdown I've seen maybe since Ortega got the daylights beaten out of him. Like, I mean, it was a vicious beating.
Him regularly.
I would say I'd be concerned about Tony Ferguson's mental capacities if they hadn't already been jeopardized way before this fight. Tony Ferguson, there's something ain't right with this cat. No. I love him. I love this guy, but there's something ain't right. I don't think, I think for a regular human being with emotions who can process things normally, I think would struggle coming back from the Gaethje fight. I think Tony Ferguson's like an animal. I think he's got an animal instinct. I think he's like a psychopath. Yeah. And again, not all psychopaths kill people. In this case, they just beat him senseless. I think Tony Ferguson, I would be shocked if Tony Ferguson didn't put a beating on Charles Oliveira in this fight.
Jared, I need a point of clarification from you. What do you mean by 8-point striking?
Hands, feet, knees, and elbows.
And you're saying Charles Oliveira is one of the best?
One of the better 8-point strikers in the UFC.
You think he's better than Tony Ferguson at 8-point striking?
Oh, yeah. Oliveira, yeah. Edson Barbosa. I think he in the spots in the pocket.
No one uses elbows like Tony Ferguson. What?
But
Did
What?
you say all? Did you say
said-
all 8 pieces? By the way, because I think you missed head, shoulders, knees, and toes. Not sure if you got those.
No, but like
Ferguson's elbows? You want to argue Ferguson's
elbows.
elbows?
He's dynamic on the feet. This dude throws everything at you.
I'll tell you what, Jace. I mean, I think the fact that not only all of the things you just said and all the things I said, I think the fact that Tony Ferguson is a relentless animal in the ring. Again, when I say animal, I mean no disrespect at all here. This guy. I mean, again, Jared, why would anybody have kept going at Justin Gaethje? Why would any person in their right mind have stood in the pocket with Justin Gaethje getting hit with that punch over and over? Why? Because he's a nutcase. That's why. He's gonna run over Oliveira.
That doesn't strike me as his gear. And you're right. I'm making a psychological assessment about a physical game. Yeah, but I mean that, damn, you have it like that, and sometimes you lose it. I've seen it at scrubs. People get beat, and it changes you as a human being every time you take a loss. But it can completely change you as a fighter. We've seen quarterbacks see, what do they call it? Seeing ghosts, the yips in baseball, where it just kind of happens all of a sudden and the guy's not who he used to be. And that is usually following the type of fight Tony Ferguson just had with Justin Gaethje.
Okay.
We'll see. Look, I mean, an impressive 12-fight winning streak. I mean, it's not like he was undefeated. It's not like it was the only loss of his career. I think it's one loss. And let's be honest, Justin Gaethje's a great fighter. There's no shame in the guy he got beat up by. If there's a guy in this division that you're going to get lumped up by, it's that guy. So I just don't see where Tony Ferguson would be broken. I think he watched a fight. I think he figured out. My brother had also pointed out the double tap. That he was doing double taps. It was and clearly Gaethje guessed it, and every double tap caught him a knuckle sandwich. Mm-hmm. It was like Pavlov's dogs. It was bad. Tap punch, tap punch, and Tony Ferguson during the course of that fight became completely programmed by the tap punch. So I think maybe if he goes to see a therapist, they'll have to do whatever the reverse, Jared, you probably know, the reverse of Pavlov's dogs, whatever that might be, so that he stops doing that. But again, Jared, if this was anybody else in this division, and we were saying, look, the beating, he just won't be the same, I would go along with that. I just think this guy's, just don't think he has those sorts of thoughts and feelings or emotions. But you might be right. And look, if he does, you'll know. I think you'll know pretty quick in this fight where Tony Ferguson stands as far as his mental psyche. I think you'll know.
Pre-Gaethje, I don't even want to see this. It doesn't strike me as a good fight. I think we're obviously in agreement that Ferguson's probably the better overall, well-rounded. But it's tough to take a loss like that. It's tough.
This is a good fight for him.
Yes,
this is a good fight for him because this again.
His handlers did a better job picking somebody than Oliveira.
When I first got back into MMA earlier this year, it was a Charles Oliveira highlight reel. That one of the first things I came across, and I was like, "Oh, look what they're doing at MMA." And it really got me more, like I said, I just started getting caught up on everything I'd missed since Chuck Liddell. And there was a lot, but again, watching the way that Tony Ferguson fights, and I've been following, I mean, I've literally watched everything Tony Ferguson's ever done, right from that stupid TV show that I've never watched outside of it because it was that horrible. I don't know. I would be hard pressed to think that, this isn't sort of the right fight for Tony to get back on track. But if he doesn't, then he's done.
Yeah.
This would be it'd be time for Dana to rethink things if this doesn't go well or if this ends quickly. I think if it ends in, like I said, spectacular fashion, where Oliveira lands something that I can't picture Ferguson being unconscious.
Yeah. If Ferguson were to lose, he might be the next of the Dana White's significant cuts. Well, we'll see. But now from the co-main event, let's talk about the main event, which is being foreshadowed a lot by the co-main event, just how good that fight is going to be. But the flyweight championship, Deiveson Figueiredo, less than a month off of his win last month at UFC 255, takes on Brandon Moreno, who also fought in the prelims for the 255. So they're both similar time off, no time off. Brandon Moreno, number one contender. Start with you this time, Joe. What do you expect from this fight?
All right. Listen, I was wrong about Figueiredo last time. And in the show after, I quickly admitted that I felt, and I had said that when I thought he might lose to Perez, what the problem was the matchup. I just thought the style didn't work, and Figueiredo left nothing to chance by just choking that SOB out quick as he could. So brilliantly done. Figueiredo's record is 47% knockouts, 37% submissions, 16% by decisions. Moreno, on the other hand, 12% knockouts. So he's not going to knock Figueiredo out. 29%, which is probably his best bet, are guillotines. Now,
Yes, Tony.
Interestingly enough, we've talked about this, and my concern with Figueiredo is he doesn't stuff takedowns. He goes for guillotines. And when he gets them, you're in trouble. The problem is he also puts himself in a position sometimes where a good wrestler can give him fits.
Tell me you're not going to pick against this guy again, Joe. Don't.
Oh, no.
Get on the train,
Oh,
kid.
no. I said it. I said a long reign if he beat Moreno. Look, Moreno's not going to get Figueiredo's back because Figueiredo, I just mentioned Oliveira, also a Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. So the chances of Moreno getting behind Figueiredo's 0%, in my opinion. 0. It's much more likely that Moreno's in a guillotine face down on the floor, and that fight ends like that. Possibly in the first round, but I'll say maybe in the second round. But I think Figueiredo, I think this is a good matchup for him, obviously against the number one contender. Exciting. I think he's gonna, again, I said, he beats Perez long run. I think this is the first of many. Also, 4 fights this year. I would like to nominate Figueiredo as our fighter of the year.
Yeah,
fair. I'll take it. I love this guy. When we did our draft, I can't remember who went right in front of me, but this is the guy I had, and I couldn't have been happier with the way that draft went. Oh, by the way, and this guy's going to keep proving it. I'm with you, Joe. I'm surprised if this sees the third round. I think it's a dominant fight. I think it's a knockout, and I think it's early. Not first 10 seconds early, but I think that it's two different classes. And I love Moreno. I love this kid. He was on the Ultimate Fighter. Really, really scrappy kid. I mean, I really, really like this guy. His heart, his determination, his fight style, everything about Moreno. So for me, it's one of those fights where I got two guys in there that I really like, but I think it's obvious which one's winning. And yeah, love the idea of Figueiredo being fighter of the year. I'm having trouble coming up with an argument against it the way he looked.
Well, I'll tell you what. Listen, Dana wants to trim the fat, and if guys like Figueiredo are like, listen, every 3 or 4 weeks, throw me in there with the number one contender, I'll take anybody on. Why would Dana need to? Why water down the sport if you've got guys that are willing to fight 4 or 5 times a year? Just do that.
Young like that doesn't make sense for guys to be in the game from when they're 19, 20 years old until they're 30 and have 23 fights. That doesn't make sense. At that age, I feel like you're knocking somebody out in the first round. You can fight 3 weeks later. Why are you taking the 4 to 6 week training camp where you're in peak physical condition, knocking somebody out in 30 seconds where it wasn't even as bad as some of your sparring sessions, and then waiting another 6 to 8 months to fight. It's never made sense to me. I wish we would see more of this. Get out there once a month. Bum of the month club. Clean it out, Figueiredo.
Yeah, I there is not a flyweight prospect. Like, I thought Perez was going to be like his toughest opponent, but right now he got over that fairly handily. Now it's just like grocery list, checking things off the grocery list, and I don't see any other flyweight contender who's going to give him problems. And this is like going to be another Mighty Mouse era-esque run.
Yeah, until your boy Anthony Rumble Johnson comes back down and fights him, right?
yeah, that's
Anthony Johnson will destroy both of those guys at 140.
I mean, yeah, that's just he's picking on the little guys. That's just bullying at that point. But speaking of the big guys, let's talk some heavyweight boxing as Anthony Joshua takes on Kubrat Pulev to defend his titles. Jared, what do you think of this fight?
Man, I like it and I don't like it. I don't like it because it's not a great fight. It's not probably who Joshua should be fighting. The guy's all right. He just never passed the eye test for me. He's got a loss to Klitschko, but some big names on his resume. Sam Peter, Tony Thompson, Derek Rossi. I mean, he's beat a few of the guys. Just not the fight I want to see. And I think we all remember the video of him making out with the kissing the reporter.
They weren't making out. Making out when both people consent.
Yeah. That was choose a different set of words there, but his forceful kiss on the female reporter there. So that's the part of it that I like, is that I don't like him. And I think Joshua's handlers have found him something he can work with here. And I never want to see that guy in a fight I feel like is real winnable. When you get a guy you don't like and you kind of want to see him get beat up, you don't want to see him keep. There's nothing more infuriating than Floyd Mayweather, people who hate Floyd Mayweather, watching him fight winnable fight over winnable fight after winnable fight and never get in the ring with somebody who might kick his ass. Broner tried to do that. And you're watching these fights where you're like, maybe this guy can get at him. I hope this guy and he just won't fight anybody in the top 20. And that's what I think we have here, is somebody that we're pretty comfortable. All right, we want this guy beat up. I think we've got him paired up right.
Yeah, listen, Pulev's 39. I don't think he has the tools that it takes to beat somebody like Joshua. He doesn't even have the tools that Ruiz had in making Joshua look bad. He kind of a pawing jab, sort of standard 1-2 punch combo,
sluggish,
not a slow moving, average hand speed, really not great power. I think this is a good fight for Joshua. I don't typically think that someone doesn't have a chance in a fight, but don't forget Anthony Joshua after Ruiz changed his style. He's talked to his good buddy Vlad Klitschko. I'm sure they've looked at the tape of the knockout Pulev suffered at the hand of Joshua's sparring partner and good friend. So I think this just sets Joshua up nicely for a Fury fight or two this coming year, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I just don't see it. I think Joshua, unlike Deontay Wilder, Joshua lost and learned a lesson and went back to the drawing board to figure out, I'm going to do some things different. Maybe I'm not just so great. I should do more. I actually heard Fury's dad talking about the fact that Anthony Joshua went right back to the gym and was like, all right, can't do that again. How do we win the fight? Whereas Wilder, well, I don't think I need to get into that right now.
Well, and most people don't. That's the beauty of scrub scraps, is that you're the human being inside of us, most of us don't go that wilder route. 95, 98% go another route, which is why I say if I had my way, everybody would go into their third fight 1-1. You would feel what it was like to win. You would feel what it was like to lose. And neither one of those experiences would compare to anything you'd ever felt before in your life. So you get that from Joshua. Now, just a la Tony Ferguson may come out and walk through Oliveira tonight. I'm not going to be totally shocked if that happens. But when something like that happens, you either change forever or you revamp, you retool, you do the things necessary to succeed. It's a make or break moment. And I expect Joshua to pass this with flying colors. This is not an Oliveira. Pushev Pulev is not Charles Oliveira. This is somebody Joshua can handle. I think it's a good job by his handlers to get somebody that looks good enough, record looks good enough. Most people want to see him get beat up. I don't think he has a lot of fans out there clamoring to say so.
Jared, you make a great point. 28-1, the one being Klitschko. It sounds good. And then you're like, oh, he's 39 and kind of pudgy and slow.
Yeah. Good enough on paper is what this guy is.
On paper is what people order pay-per-views based on.
Yeah.
Brilliant fight here.
Yeah, I think Joshua's going to dominate and get this done fairly easily. But now we're going to end the show like we always do. And Jared, hit us with that flurry.
Joe recently lost one of his best friends, someone he's known since his childhood and grew up with, to suicide. He mentioned it on last week's show, and I hope he doesn't mind me bringing it up again. I personally respect and admire his ability to share. He was able to reach out to the people closest to him for a hand in a time of hurt and confusion. Joe was able to reach out in a way that so many of us are so often unable to do. We like to be strong, powerful, confident, and independent. We like to think we can take on everything the world has to offer by ourselves. Inside the ring, that's what's expected of us, but outside the ring in real life, we need one another. When we reach out, sometimes we're able to help, sometimes we aren't. And many people that need the help the most never reach out at all. And even when you reach out to help them, they believe they don't need it. Seems like for most of us, it isn't till death is staring us in the face that we're willing to admit we could use a hand. And even then, it's one of the hardest things for most of us to do. I experienced a real-life version of this on Thursday. The day before last, I was on a roof with a female business owner, probably in her 50s, working on an estimate to clean the kitchen hood exhaust and HVAC systems at our marketplace. I hopped down off a flat roof onto a slanted roof where the ladder was leaning against. I reached my hand out to her and said, "Do you need a hand?" She shook her head. "No, I got it. And I turned and made 2 steps down the ladder when I heard her foot get caught in the gutter and looked up in time to see her land on her back and start sliding backwards down the slanted roof head first. I grabbed the top of the ladder, jumped over it, and grabbed her ankle with my other hand. When I was sure I had a good hold on her and she was okay, I held the ladder with my foot and for a second time in just a few seconds, reached out, offered her a hand. This time she took it. We can never know for sure how close we may be to a dangerous situation, and none of us can handle everything life throws at us by ourselves. We're going through a tough time in the world, tougher than I ever remember, so when we struggle, it's as important as ever to reach out. And if someone very close to you offers a hand, you might just want to take it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for that, Jared. I mean, nothing is asking for help there's no weakness in it. There's no weakness in showing emotion. There's no weakness in asking for help. And if you need help, feel free to ask someone you care about because they will gladly help you if they truly care about you.
A final thought to Jared, my therapist, since I've met him, basically a great friend and someone who has always been an easy person to talk to. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. 80% of my face-to-face conversations with Jared end in tears. About 75% of phone calls end that way, as do about 50% of these shows. I've never felt so conceited that I wouldn't ask for someone's help. And between Jace and all of the other amazing people at CMG Podcasts, the love and support I got from everybody as I dealt with this tragedy. Just people, every couple of days, how you feeling? Just wanted to check in on you. A buddy of mine has COVID. I sent him a text. I said, how are you feeling? He said, yeah, I'm getting better every day. How are you doing? I know you were pretty devastated by that loss. And again, I mean, there's a guy puking into a bucket, and he's more concerned about how I'm feeling. Meanwhile, my heart's broken for my friend's children. The pain I feel isn't my own. And for everyone around me to share in that means the world to me. I don't like to cry on camera, but it's about to happen. So I'm just going to finish what I was saying.
Okay.
If we can't do that, then we don't belong here. I've always struggled with somebody who could watch. Kitty Genovese, I think, is one of the most famous stories, but you have this kind of bystander effect. People nowadays are so used to being behind or in front of the camera so that it's not real. I'm just kind of watching it. I don't have to dedicate myself to it. I can just kind of watch. And when people suffer around us, if we're not reaching out, if we're not coming together, if the people around you are watching you go through that kind of situation, Joe, and they're not embracing you, then they don't deserve to be around you, because you have a light and a love that warms me. And I think a lot of the people around you would agree with that warmth being a warm thing that you deserve to have around you if you're going to be there when shit hits the fan in times of hurt and confusion. If you're going to be right there, then you deserve that light, that love, and that warmth. And if you're not, then you don't.
I refuse to surround myself with anybody who's not like that.
Love you, brother.
Same. Love you too. I look at, I think the three of us could kick most asses. Anybody who's watching this, a lot of tears on this show. You don't think that these are three tough guys? We talk, get over the macho bullshit. Who cares? To me, I think it takes a lot to be a big man, to step up, to admit when you're wrong, to admit when you don't know something, to admit when you lost, to cry, to have emotion, to be strong and cry with somebody else.
It's why scraps works.
Jared, most of my conversations with you start off very inane. I'm like, well, let me tell you what's going on with this thing. And by the time we're done, it's like,
yeah, for sure.
You need it. Feels good. And it makes me happy.
I think in a way, you talk about the machismo and bravado. And in a way, I think that makes it the best place for it. Because you all get together and we talk about fighting here, where we actually do some fighting at Scrubs, but you bring that bravado and machismo right to the height, and then you go, hey, this stuff is okay. And it's hard to reconcile in your head how the toughest among us are also okay being in touch with their emotions. But I found that at gyms over and over and over again, that there were fighters who'd been through the worst traumas in their life, where people who didn't find boxing and had been through the same traumas weren't even able to communicate and connect on a personal level. And these guys were ready to help the kid learn something, or ready to give a hug, or ready to help somebody up off the canvas that they just knocked down. You found it over and over and over again. Like, why aren't we mainstreaming this? And it's beautiful. I love that, Joe. Yeah. Put that bullshit behind you. It's okay what we do here. And you're out there listening and need somebody to call. Do you feel like you reach out and the people around you aren't there for you? Reach out to one of us. We'll find you somebody to talk to if we can't do it ourselves. I promise you we will make time. It's the type of individuals you're dealing with.
I stayed up really late last night and needed a little motivation before I hopped in the shower before we went live this morning. And I listened to Charlie Daniels Band. Devil Went Down to Georgia. And I got to tell you, tears in my eyes through that entire friggin' song. I don't know what it is, if it's being 45 or a father or being in quarantine or what. I definitely feel more emotional about things. I was literally just looking to get a little fired up before we got on here because I knew I had to rip Jace a new one for that Who You Got. And I'm glad I did. And I'm glad I showered beforehand because I'm going to want to watch that back 10 more times. But you know what, man? The emotions is what drives me. And usually the emotion is love. And with love will always come anger and sadness. Those are just part and parcel. But if you're just having the angry and the loving part and none of the tears, I think you're missing out on the true experience of life. And I think that's the worst part of it, because there's a lot to love. There's a lot to appreciate about this world. Mayweather fights? No. But a lot of other things. And we should focus on that.
Yeah. And if you have to put on a front, if you have to put on that machismo front, that mask, when you're with a friend, then they really aren't your true friend. If you can open up, be yourself, cry, then they are a true friend and really care about you.
Well, then I promise you those emotions are going to come out of you. You have to decide how. Yes, the people that are doing that through tears, through hugs, through helping hands, through chats like we're having right now, those are going to be the happier, healthier, more successful people among us. Those emotions, I promise, they will come out of you. You might punch somebody on the street one day. You might be freaking out in a gas station and go viral. Maybe that's how it'll get out of you. But if you don't do it in positive and healthy ways, it'll find its way out in other ways. And I think that's one of the main reasons we do it, to connect, but also because it's just got to have a spot.
Yes, sir. And Jared, you mentioned Among Us. Make sure you tune in to the Clovercrest Media Group Twitch channel later today, 6:00, where we will be playing Among Us. And this podcast is brought to you by Clovercrest Media. Make sure you go to clovercrestmedia.com. Check out any of the 30 other podcasts that they have in store. Sports, politics, true crime. Go check it out. clovercrestmedia.com. And for myself.
Wait, Jared, real quick. There's not Jared. Sorry, Jace. What I meant to say is Jared. He mentioned all those podcasts. There's 3 different podcasts you could listen to this week where it's me screaming at Jace.
Yes. Yes, there are.
Screaming at Jace. Enjoy them all.
That should be its own podcast. And now, screaming at Jace with Jace Garcia and Joe Dwyer.
I'll tell you what. If I didn't love that dude and respect that dude, I would never talk to him like the way I do on these shows. So I just want you to know, big guy,
thank you,
how much I love and appreciate everything that you do, even when you come up with the worst Who You Gots of all time.
Thank you. I love and appreciate both of you. Thank you, guys. I love and appreciate Tony watching, everyone watching. Love and appreciate you guys. Make sure you tell someone you love them. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is our main event.